Questions to Michael Kugelman, because the question of American hypocrisy is front and center. America does this all the time against its enemies all across the world, whether it's in Pakistan, Afghanistan, elsewhere. They go and target their enemies, and it's totally kosher for Washington to do so. When a country which is supposed to be a strategic ally is allegedly doing the same, they're doubling down in this fashion, leading to many to wonder in India, A, can you trust the United States as a true strategic ally? Are they truly on your side? And B, why are they so soft on khalistani terrorists? I mean, this man is threatening to kill the Indian Prime Minister. This is not freedom of speech. This guy is a khalistani terrorist. He is threatening the Indian state. He's threatening the Indian people. And DC seems surprisingly soft on him. And your other friend, Israel, is conducting all kinds of operations. America pretends to be upset, yet chooses to look the other way.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. So I absolutely accept and acknowledge the allegation of selectivity and hypocrisy. I mean, if you look at examples of Soleimani or even bin Laden for that matter, indeed, the U.S. carries out these activities. But look, I mean, to be very candid, I think that the way this is seen in the U.S., Khalistanis in the United States are not breaking U.S. laws. They're not threatening the U.S. or its interests. Their activities and what they say are generally protected by U.S. law. And indeed, there have been some cases, for sure, in the U.S. When Indian consulates have been targeted by these individuals. We all know that. And I recall that U.S. officials have very strongly condemned those incidents when they happen. This was from a U.S. perspective, this alleged attempted assassination of Pannun. It's a serious breach of law, a violation of sovereignty, and the U.S. takes these things very seriously, as any country would. Wouldn't India react the same way if the U.S. or Canada tried to carry out a murder for hire on Indian soil? Would India not react in a particular way? So yeah, I think that unfortunately these things happen, and it's particularly unfortunate in this particular case, if these allegations are true, that a strategic partner of the United States is carrying out a murder for hire activity. But my final point is that I actually think the Biden administration has been very careful and quite responsible in terms of how it has responded to these very serious allegations, particularly if you compare to the Canada case, right? The U.S. has not really the government has not really said much publicly about the allegations. It's allowed the process to play out. The indictments have been released. That lays out a lot of detailed evidence. And I think that the U.S. is very keen to ensure that it doesn't let this issue torpedo its relationship with India, which the administration certainly considers to be very important.
Sushant Sareen wants to come in and respond to A, would India be okay if the U.S. carried out hits against people living in India but acting against American interests? And B, he says these Khalistanis, even though India thinks of them as terrorists, aren't seen as terrorists by America because they haven't really conducted any violence against American interests, and therefore, while they may be irritants, it's not seen as if they should be thought of as terrorists. Sushant.
Okay, Rahul, on the first one, if India valued the relationship with the United States and the United States was to carry out such an action in India, India would not make a song and dance about it publicly. Even we have a justice system, even we have our own independent, quote unquote, legal system. And anybody who wants to tell me that the Justice Department in the United States is completely independent of the executive branch, okay, fine. I'm maybe they are smoking something which they should not be smoking. But the fact of the matter remains, India would probably raise this issue, raise it quietly, silently, and try and sort it out. The way we did it with Iran when we caught one of their agents trying to bomb an Israeli embassy. We did it kind of quietly. We didn't make much of a song and dance about it. On the second issue, my question to Michael is, Michael, if supposing you claim that the Khalistanis have not broken any law, supposing, Michael, you were to today make a video and say that no American or no Indian should fly in Air India because their life would be in danger, very clearly alluding to a possibility of bombing an aircraft, what would happen to you? Number one. Number two, if you were to stand up and say that, well, I'm announcing a bounty on an American diplomat and that calling for the assassination of American diplomats, painting a target on their back. Please tell me, what is the action which will be taken against you? Will that fall under the rubric of freedom of speech and expression? or will you crack down on that? And I can give you many instances where people have even said something online, even though they are probably college students or school students or whatever, and they've been put in the clanger. And you're telling me that Pannu is completely above board, he's not an agent of the United States, that nobody has acted against him?
Let Michael Kugelman respond.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to defend this guy. He clearly has very odious views, and I would be perfectly happy to see him put behind bars for a reason. But I'm trying to explain to you, answer the question that Rahul had answered earlier as to why the U.S. doesn't do more to crack down against these individuals. And I was laying it out that he has not violated a U.S. law. I'm not trying to justify the things he says, the threats that he's made. Absolutely not. And my other to the first part of what you said, Sushant, I would actually argue that the U.S. has indeed done things exactly the way you had said you would want India to do things if India were targeted by something like this. The U.S., particularly compared to Canada, the U.S. government has really been fairly quiet. It's talked a lot to its Indian interlocutors privately. It has not been leveling public allegations in a big way. You don't have senior U.S. officials talking about this very much at all, quite frankly. Letting the DOJ take care of its job, letting the indictments speak for what's happening. And U.S. officials respond. They respond to inquiries from the press, press that type of thing. But I would argue that the way that the U.S. has handled it has actually been very
Yashowardhan Azad wants to come in and respond on the question of American hypocrisy and whether America is acting as a true friend. Remember, a few days from now, there is the BRICS summit. The Prime Minister will be meeting Vladimir Putin, maybe meeting Xi Jinping. America trying to draw India away from those countries. But if this is how your good friends act, can Washington even be trusted, Yashowardhan Azad?
Michael, I have a very simple question. If there is an American who's become an Indian and he's threatening your president every day, he's instigating the Americans over there to have some, anti-American flag. He's spouting venom, racial hatred. Won't you ask for his repatriation? Don't we have a repatriation treaty? Now, NIA, which does anti-terrorist actions all over the world now, has given a proper dossier with proper evidence to the American authorities. I agree with you, the Americans have been much more mature than the Canadians on this matter because we have strategic relationship. I understand that. But a simple thing, won't this man be repatriated? Shouldn't he be repatriated? Because our justice system will take care of that, of the threats he's giving to the Indian Prime Minister, and he's trying to work it out by giving money. And on 26th January, when there was some agitation in Delhi, there was actually, at his behest, there was a flag which was posted, Khalistani flag, out here on the Red Fort. So my question is, why not repatriate him?
Mr. Kugelman?
As I had said before, I'm not a legal expert. It's not my place to weigh in on this. But again, as I had said before, I know I'm repeating this, but again, the U.S. government perspective is that he has not violated any U.S. laws, and that indeed India is a strategic partner, and that indeed the U.S. recognizes that what this guy has said about India, threats toward India, very concerning. But in terms of whether that lends itself to some type of repatriation agreement, I don't see how that would flow from that. But again, I'm not the legal expert, so you'd want to ask a seasoned lawyer that question.
I want to go across to Abhijit Iyer. What are the lessons from this entire episode? How do we ensure that India doesn't get caught in a situation like this? If there is an operation that is to be executed, it must be executed with a high level of finesse. I mean, look at what the Mossad is pulling off, one after another, stunning operations of breathtaking audacity. And in this case, in particular, we've left just so much evidence that anybody who's even not a spy or a sleuth will look at this and say, hey, come on, you have to be more mature and smarter than that.
Yeah. Look, the first rule of the game is don't get caught, Rahul.
Sure.
And, the thing is, I don't accept it was we who did it. I accept it was Vikas Yadav who tried some stunt. But that said, the failures aren't with Vikas Yadav. This is a personal failure. There's nothing linking him to the government. My issue is really with the way we've dealt with Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Even the dossier we sent on him to Interpol for a red corner notice got rejected for insufficient information. Uh, I actually think that Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is probably a raw agent himself. I certainly think he's a great patriot because anybody who watches his videos on Twitter gets de-radicalized immediately. Anybody who says Khalistan just needs to watch his video and he'll say Hindustan, Hindustan from every single turret, mosque or minaret around. But humor aside, we need to also separate. In India, we understand that law and order is a state subject and other things are central subjects. Here, this is this Merrick Garland guy who's the state attorney making the case. The FBI is completely different. But when we talk about Israel, understand, Israel engages with the FBI. Israel engages with the CIA. They have their moles planted in there. America was bugging Angela Merkel's office. They were bugging Lula's office, the Brazilian president's office, the German chancellor's office. The Israelis do the same with the Americans. They keep tabs on these investigations. They preempt them and things like that. If you can't do that, then why are you getting into this situation? Third, finally, and I think this is very important, America applies the Brandenburg principle to incitement, which is a specific threat against a specific person or a group. Right. Now, it works in a first world policing situation, though I would suggest that, Chicago and several other countries make downtown Burundi or Burkina, Ouagadougou or some African capital look first world by comparison, but leave Chicago aside. Or Palo Alto aside for that matter, which is actually more like Dharavi these days. But focus for a minute on the Brandenburg principle. It's very specific threat against a specific person or group. The Hindu girl who threatened the community center over Palestine, she made a specific threat against them. Gurpatwant is very clever. He avoids either the specificity of the threat or he avoids the specificity of the target. He actually words his threats very, very carefully. So we need to understand that there is a legal distinction out there. Second, remember, in America, you can have these very high standards. In India, we don't have that standard of policing. We don't have that standard of judiciary who's able to, dissect. We are, after all, a third world country with third world institutions. We have to have much higher standards actually much lower standards of what constitutes incitement, because anything can start off a riot out here. We don't have the investigative ability. We don't have the preventive ability. So what you're looking at is a clash of two differential standards out here.
Okay.
Which is, it's a more fundamental issue. It's a
Colonel
systemic
Shukla,
issue
what
we
are
need
the
to
lessons
address.
from this episode? Maybe if there are officials from forces like the CRPF who have to be deployed for such missions, we should send them on a year-long or longer training to the Mossad. Let them go learn some real skills and then come back and apply them rather than try and act like a Desi James Bond and then end up with egg on their face.
Well, I think that the first thing that we need to remember, not just as a country and as a political entity, but also as an intelligence entity, is that when you target a citizen from another country, especially advanced Western democracies, the nature of their politics and the tradition of their politics demands that they take retaliation, or that they at least investigate and find out how one of their citizens was killed. We seem to have, or whoever has done this particular operation seems to have operated on the assumption that there is going to be no rigorous investigation or no sort of repercussions for what have happened. Now, that is something that we, I would not advocate going to the Mossad for training and so on, because there's just a completely different paradigm that they follow and we follow. But certainly we need to be more rigorous in our investigation and intelligence tradecraft so that we don't get stuck in these embarrassing situations.
Okay, I'd leave it there. I think we've covered a lot of ground. You've heard different kinds of perspectives. The good thing is, in a historical arc, this has not been India's track record. There haven't been multiple such attempts and therefore, if there is an aberration, I think Vikas Yadav has already been relieved of government service, and that's something that's already been confirmed. He was arrested by the Delhi police. That again has been confirmed. So this is to be looked at as an aberration. Hopefully it will never happen again. And whoever we send has the requisite skills to be able to execute operations with finesse without leaving such a clear digital footprint, which really leaves no one with anything to say. There's no defense left in the manner in which this official carried out his duties. Terribly unfortunate, this, and hopefully it won't happen again.